You got them? All right, very good. Come on in close. Let's get in close. One thing I learned about these things. What can I, Kevin? Why don't you go on the other side so we balance it out? Can we do that? Okay, good.
You're missing one.
Oh, Jim's out there. We're getting him out here.
Excuse me, ma'am. You're not. Your parents weren't window makers.
Okay. And let me begin. First of all, thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. I know it's kind of short notice, but it's a big day, and I think it's a very big event. You know, we went into this campaign with the goal of putting the Republican state senators from Nassau, in particular, on the endangered species list. We didn't have any expectations that they'd be extinct by the end of the night, and we have changed the saying of the Long Island Nine, which were all Republican senators. Long Island always had only all Republican senators, barring a 2-year stint somewhere a few years back. Now you've got 6 Long Island Democrats and only 3 Republicans. And I think it's important because it's not only a sea change here on Long Island, but it's meaningful for the entire state. And you have a delegation that is going to be committed, in spite of what the campaign from the other side was talking about, is going to be committed to advancing Long Island's interests, not just defending Long Island's interests, but advancing Long Island's interests. And I think that's a good thing for the taxpayers and citizens of Long Island. And I just want to say, and I'm not going to go on, I'm going to ask Todd to pick it up, and then each of the senators that I'll introduce will have a moment to speak. But you know, I just think it's important for us all to recognize how momentous this is. We didn't expect, you know, to really win every seat. I think we had a good expectation we're going to do well. And you know, the political environment, the anger and the upset over Donald Trump and what's going on in Washington certainly led to bringing our overall turnout up from about 36%, where it's been in these mid-year elections, to about 50%. And you've seen the numbers in the absentee ballots and other indications that demonstrated that it was basically Democratic vote that was coming out yesterday, and that helped us. And we did an awful lot. This is years in the making that we've been working on. I want to thank also Mike Gianaris and Andrea Stewart-Cousins from the Senate. Those were our partners. We've been partners together for a lot of years trying to get this done. A lot of cycles with less success. First we had success, of course, with Todd, and then with John Brooks last year. But this has not been easy. And I want to thank the governor also. He was out here, he campaigned here, he raised money for us, and so we thank him for all of his help, and certainly the great campaigns that each of them here up in front have run. And so you have Kevin Thomas, who is the senator now, senator-elect from the 6th Senatorial, having defeated Kent Hannon. Of course, you know Todd Kaminsky, the 9th Senatorial District. Get the numbers right. Anna Kaplan in the 7th is going to be our new state senator, having defeated Elaine Phillips. John Brooks is the state senator from the 8th Senatorial District, right? And Jim Gorin, who also a piece of Suffolk as well, and we thank our chair in Suffolk and our county executive in Suffolk. Jim Gorin is the 5th Senatorial District, having defeated Carl Marcelino. So I think this is going to be the makeup of a great team that's going to be great for Long Island, great for Nassau County and Suffolk County, working with Monica Martinez, who won in Suffolk County, now making up the Long Island 6. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Chairman Jacobs. It was only about 2.5 years ago that I ran in the special election when there were no Democrats in the state Senate. And just to give perspective to last night's victory, many people thought it should not happen, meaning Long Islanders should not even want to run this race, and that it would make sense to focus the party's efforts in other areas. But Chairman Jacobs did not believe that, and he knew that having a Democratic state Senate made up of honest, hardworking members was the key to turning around Albany. And he had been working on that for some time, and he put all his faith behind myself in that race, and we ended up pulling it out by 0.5% to become the only Democratic senator at that time. What Chairman Jacobs has done between the moments before that night and tonight is nothing short of extraordinary. And this is a project that he and the members of his executive board have believed in for so long. And it's so grateful and fulfilling to have this. Now, why does this matter? First, Chairman Jacobs has always believed, first and foremost, in honesty in government. And it's taken, unfortunately, many corruption scandals to get us to this place. That's what won me my seat, literally. Senator Brooks as well. Laura Kern won her seat after an indicted county executive, and on and on. And Jay's mantra has always been, just go do what's right. And now we're going to be able to do that in Albany. For too long, we've had indictment after indictment. 4 of the last 5 Senate Majority Leaders, the Speaker of the Assembly, member after member after member from both sides have been carted out in handcuffs from the state capitol. And now we have a chance to really do something about that. Zero, next to nothing in terms of ethics reform has been done, and I'm really glad that's something that we are going to focus on. But more than that, we're going to have senators who are really dedicated to the things that matter to Long Islanders. And first, there's a whole raft of common sense legislation that has gone nowhere in the last few years because the Republicans in the Senate have not allowed it. Things like common sense gun safety legislation, voting reforms, environmentally friendly bills. So many important things are going to get done. But beyond that, we're going to have hardworking senators who care about Long Islanders, who are going to invest in the Long Island Railroad, who are going to do their best to make sure the economy here is humming, that our children have the best education possible. That's what we're going to be fighting for day in and day out. And when you combine that with the great progressive legislation we're going to do, I'm very, very excited. I have no doubt at the end of the day that every one of the members standing next to me are going to wake up in the morning and say, what's best for Long Island? And that's the only thing that they're going to say. And that's why Chairman Jacobs has believed in us. That's why we're here today, thanks to his efforts and years of planning. And that's why I'm proud to stand here among this great group of senators on this victorious morning. Thank you.
John?
I'm John Brooks, the state senator in the 8th District, and I join with Todd in thanking Chairman Jacobs with the team he put together. Not just the team that we had elected yesterday, but the entire organization that he's put together that over the last few years have really built an organization within the community, people that are concerned about Long Island, the direction of Long Island, what was happening in Albany, or better put, not happening in Albany. I think the Democratic Committee in this county yesterday performed just an outstanding statement to where our community is and how fed up they are with the lack of Albany and Washington addressing the problems that we have. As Todd said, this last session alone, we left so many issues on the table that weren't voted on. Long Island yesterday elected a team of individuals whose priority is the people of Long Island and the people of the state of New York. You know, when I first won election, and I think the day after we had 14-vote lead, and we had to go through that recount. And for 2 years, they talked about the accidental senator. Well, honestly, the accidental senator was Mike Venditto. Had Dave Tenenberg not run into a problem, he would have been elected the senator. My roots, as I've said so many times on Long Island, go back to the 1600s. I ran because I believe in our communities and what needs to be done with our communities. Throughout this campaign, the folks involved in the Democratic organization from this county were going door to door, talking to the people. Labor, the teachers, other groups were out talking to the people because we are the party that represents the people. We are the party that understands how unfairly we've been treated on many issues here on Long Island. We're not the party that said Long Island gets 12% of state aid, because we don't. Nassau County gets 4 and Suffolk gets 8. We have to modify that. We understand the impact of the new federal tax laws and what it's going to do to us in the state and in Long Island. And we also understand that there are areas that are not functioning well, and we're going to work together collectively to find solutions that work for everyone. So last night was a great victory, in part for our chairman, who has over the last several years built not only an organization, but candidates that are well qualified and fully represent the needs and concerns of the people of Long Island and New York State. I think for the first time in a long time, we're going to see a state senate that is moving forward in the early stages, passing important legislation. As Todd pointed out, there are many, many bills that should have been passed last June that weren't. We're going to start to move that forward, but most importantly, the group of senators standing here now and the group that fills our caucus are people that are concerned with not the special interest groups, but the people of this state. And we're going to respond to their needs, listen to their concerns, and put together legislation that addresses the problems that have been ignored for far too long. Thank you all very much.
Anna?
Anna Kaplan for District 7. I'm really honored to be standing here with senators and also senators-elect. I want to say a big thank you to Chairman Jacobs, our governor, Senator Gianaris, and Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousin. And I think I speak for everyone here. We are Long Islanders. This is our home. This is where our family and friends live. And I'm really pleased to have everyone on board here to work with them in Albany come January.
Go ahead. Jim Gorin?
Jay, I just want to say, you get it done.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for what you've done. And you know, I'm 50% Nassau and 50% Suffolk, but Jay treated me as if I'm 100% Nassau. And I'm also grateful to Rich Schaefer and my Democratic colleagues out in Suffolk County. You know, I've been a proud Democrat my whole life, but I think what makes this so important, it's got nothing to do with partisanship. It's got to do with the fact that the current Republican majority, through their rules, are stopping democracy from moving forward. So we're going to change that when we get to Albany in January. We're going to work real hard, and we're going to get all the important pieces of legislation that have been sitting there for years passed right away. And the other quick thing I want to say is, you know, during this campaign, all of us got hit with this ridiculous charge that we were going to, you know, take all our clout and help some Democrats in New York City, which is absolutely a bunch of nonsense. And now that we have 6 Democrats from Long Island, we are going to work very hard to make sure that we get more resources for Long Island, as well as working with the rest of the state to move the state forward. We have Andrea Stewart-Cousins. We have a suburban senator. And so we're all going to work hard for Long Island, for the state, and change is coming to New York. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you. Kevin?
And I'm representing District 6. Welcome to my district, by the way. So I am a former legal services attorney and an appointee of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. When Jay Jacobs, the chairman, asked me to run, he knew the vision for this district. They needed someone who would step up and represent working class families. And that's why I was elected to this position. I'm going to make sure I protect Long Islanders, and I'm going to make sure that we give them the best education possible. We're going to find a solution to this opioid epidemic, and we're going to make sure women have a right to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this, I want you to know, is the new Long Island caucus. That's what we have here. And these are the senators that will be going to Albany to represent Long Island in the best way possible. And the only thing I would say as a political person, as the political leader here in Nassau, and I know I speak for Rich Schaefer, my good friend in Suffolk, the same, the last thing we want a year or 2 years from now is for the voters to have buyer's remorse. I think the most important thing is that we all make sure we always remember our obligation to represent the people of Long Island. And this team is going to do it. They're going to do a great job. And now if you have any questions, we'll be happy to take them. Sure.
James, I want to ask you how you're going to work with your Democratic colleagues from the city. We have seen this before. We elected 2 Democrats, and they got Buffalo. How is it going to be different this time? How are you going to ensure that Andrew Stewart-Cousins, Mike Gianaris, the conference that you're operating in understands the issues of Long Island and delivers for Long Island. Because the one thing we can say about the Long Island Nine is that they held Albany hostage. How are you going to make sure that Long Island gets its fair share?
Thank you. Well, look, I think one of the most important things is they had no cushion. They had 32 members. So I put extreme pressure on them. We obviously have more of a cushion. But that conference in 2009 and 10, 7 members went to prison. They were fundamentally had some serious issues that we don't have. So I'm very confident that we have really good people who are not going to let their voters down. And you know, I think the mistakes of the past are readily apparent to everyone. We want to stay in the majority, and we want to prove to people that we're going to be a growing and effective majority. No one has any desire to repeat that past. So I think there are a lot of good distinctions to draw from.
Perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
How expensive and what factor did it, I mean, what really drove voters, do you feel?
Well, I think in the first instance, what drove voters, if you take a look at it, there's got to be a reason why you go from 2014, about a 36% turnout, to 2018 with a 50% turnout, which is really unique in midterm elections. So what's the reason? What happened? Now, we had good campaigns, and we had a great get out the vote. The stay the line effort that we put into our campaign, which kept people who voted for governor to go all the way down the line, I think was effective. But the bottom line is this. Look, if you talk to voters anywhere, and I'm not going to soft pedal it or take more credit than is deserved, the fact of the matter is people are angry with what's going on in Washington. People are angry with the division, the hate, the intolerance. They're angry with the whole tone in Washington. You know, we can argue about policy. We can disagree about who should get the money in a tax refund that goes where it goes. But we shouldn't be arguing about what the fundamental values of America are and what we stand for as a country when it comes to immigration, when it comes to tolerance, inclusion, and diversity, and all of the things that have made America great. I think that is what motivated people throughout this county, because Nassau County voters, by the way, if you look at the demographics of it, we're a microcosm of the United States. 62% white, same breakdown in minority. We are truly a microcosm of this entire country. And these voters in Nassau County are also very highly informed, not only highly educated, but highly informed. And I think that did help bring that number up. And then they took a look at this option, and because I've seen wave elections before, and I think in Nassau we had a wave, and wave elections don't always throw out the incumbents, of the party that is, on the receiving end of the wave. In this case, they had excellent candidates running excellent campaigns, and that's what I think, brought the. Sure.
Just also very quickly, each of our districts is perfectly gerrymandered for a Republican to win. So for example, I have Baldwin, and at some point in Baldwin Harbor, as a street goes south, it becomes Senator Brooks's district for 10 blocks for no reason, other than Dean Skelos didn't want that many Democrats in his district. And many of them were done, I think, with explicit racial bias in mind. So I just think to know that it's now 6-3 on Long Island for Democrats in light of that gerrymandering is even more astounding. And that's also something that has to be changed in the next few years and have fair districting, because for far too long people have been disenfranchised through that method. So.
Great. Marshall?
Actually, I have two things. You talked about the need, among the issues that the Long Island delegation would look at would be fixing the Long Island Railroad, which also means funding for the MTA, which is the parent company. I wonder what new taxing mechanisms you think would pass in Albany now so that you could have the money to fix the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, the
Sure.
MTA, and all of its various problems.
Look, I think congestion pricing is going to be the topic of the session. I think we will all have to consider it very seriously. We all have not even sat down to have a cup of coffee with each other, so it's something we're going to have to do. But many of us are on record supporting it and knowing that we have to take bold steps right now to make sure that we have the funding we need for our mass transit. But we will certainly not be making the mistake of the 2009-2010 caucus who imposed a commuter tax. We're not going to be taxing. We're not going to be doing that. But we do have to come up with new ways. So, for example, 3 things are on the docket this year. One is marijuana, two is gambling, and three is congestion pricing. These are all things that are going to come in front of us, and we're going to have to make tough decisions about. But certainly leaving our railroad and our subway in the state they're in is not an acceptable.
If I can just follow up on the congestion pricing thing, the MTA board has said that congestion pricing isn't going to raise enough to do all the things that you need, including the Long Island Railroad. So are there other taxes that you would consider, a payroll tax? I you took the commuter tax off the table, but other things, a gas tax that would raise the money that you're going to need to do all the things?
Look, we have not had any conversations about that, so it would be premature to say anything. But many of us, including myself, have taken oaths, literal oaths to voters that we will not be taxing them, period.
So if I could ask my second question, the last time the Democrats were in control of the Senate, as you said, 7 people went to jail, including a whole laundry list of people, including Pedro Espada, which I think you have some passing familiarity with. How will this be different?
It has to be different. In the first few weeks, I hope we could do serious ethics reform, whether it's the LLC loophole, whether it's addressing campaign contribution amounts. It has to happen. All I could say is personally, that's why I'm in this job. I'm here to do that. I saw from my perch as a federal prosecutor both parties out of control, with nobody really minding the store, and that's something I'm very serious about addressing. What happens when we get into the debates about outside income, which I feel very strongly about, empowering local prosecutors, many other things we're going to have to have those conversations. We have not even met as a Long Island group, let alone an entire conference. So it would be premature to say we're going to do this or doing that, but we're going to do something. It's something I'm very passionate
We
about.
haven't had time to sleep yet.
Yeah.
Let's
Doug?
give another media outlet a chance.
Okay,
Do you see an ally for you in that, he's a centrist, some believe that he liked having a Republican state Senate. Maybe if he feels things pulling a little bit to the left, do you think he will rely on you as a bloc to stop that?
Let me just step in on that. Again, and I'm not a senator, but I will tell you from a political standpoint, I think what this team is about, and this goes to the question, frankly, of what the Republicans' campaign theme was about, that Bill de Blasio and the city would be pulling the strings on this group. This is a very committed group that's committed to Long Island. If it's good for Long Island and for Long Island voters, it's going to be good for them, I assume. And that's, I think, the answer to that question, whether the governor's in favor of it or anybody else.
To the question though, do you see him relying on you as like, don't let things get too far?
Well,
Look, I think the governor has to take a view beyond any one city into what's good for the whole state. And to the extent he's concerned about the suburbs, then it aligns with our concerns, and we're happy to work with him on that. So I think he's certainly going to be an ally on a lot of issues, and where we see Long Island needing something, then we're gonna fight for it. So there are obviously natural synergies there. I hope we could work together.
go ahead.
Just last month, $13 billion remake of JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport. That's transportation, of course it's national and international. Can anything be done perhaps with your relationship with the governor to have him think in terms of doing something to support rebuilding of the Long Island Railroad?
Well, all I will tell you is the governor, I talk to the governor, they talk to the governor all the time. The governor's committed to that. In other words, again, Marcia's question is on point. The big issue is where you're going to find the money, and I don't know whether they're passing, the marijuana law or what have you. When I look at it, I kind of look at, marijuana and I look at tax revenue coming in. But who knows where anything is going to go and what's going to happen, and I don't know even if that gets passed. But I would tell you that in terms of advocating for Long Island, this team is going to be as strong a team as you can imagine. And it's not just about, everybody looks at it in terms of, are you going to defend Nassau and defend Suffolk County from, what other interests may be. They're going to be out there affirmatively advocating for Nassau and Suffolk counties to get the very types of benefits. But Marcia's question originally, on tax revenue is going to be that's going to be the sticking point, the devil's in the detail kind of a thing.
You can tax marijuana and raise money for the Long Island.
Well, that's what my point was. I thought that was,
Absolutely.
Sports betting too.
You can have a smoking car.
That's right, a smoking car.
I have a question for Anna Kaplan.
Yes.
If you could step up to the
Sure.
mic. What do you have to say about the fact that Ward won in this election? I mean, what do you think that is saying?
I think it's an amazing. I hope that there are more and more women come on board and take these spots. because I think we bring a different look to the Senate floor or any other elected official office. I think we look at issues very differently than men do, and we address them differently. So I'm all for that, and I would love to see more women running for office.
What about the climate? What did that say? How do you think that affected women being victorious, the political climate?
I think we did unite, and thank God for a lot of different institutions that support women to come out and run for these offices. Like Emily's List and Eleanor's Legacy. I've been a beneficiary of both, and I can tell you I will do my part to help other women to run for office.
In the back, yeah.
So perhaps one of the newer senators, the biggest issue of cost of living and wages, there's a great divide and it's not a fruitful one. What you would do to try to tackle that?
Me?
Yeah,
So I can tell you as a councilwoman, I worked very hard and I found out there were tax credits through New York State. And I worked very hard with a developer to bring in 72 units of affordable senior housing. There are also those tax credits that we can bring into Long Island for our next generation and welcome younger people coming in. So there's a lot of really resources. It's a matter of all of us working together and being united and stand up for Long Island and our residents.
May I?
Good, sure, ahead.
Long Island has great potential, but we have a lot of young Long Islanders leaving Long Island to the city to find jobs. We've got to bring jobs back to the island. We've got to bring investments back to the island. So that's something that all of us should be looking into in terms of getting the economy up here, to bring investments back here, and making sure young Long Islanders stay on Long Island.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to quickly add. And then one of the other things we have to make sure Albany recognizes is that the cost of living on Long Island is a bit higher. So we need more resources just so that everybody can work hard and survive out here.
Go ahead.
Can we talk about, it's not a Democrat or Republican issue in Albany, but it's a big fight every year to get our piece of the pie. Can you talk about how you as a group will be able to at least get us as much as we've always gotten or possibly increase it in what is a very difficult fight every year?
Sure, I mean, so it's an empirical test. You pass or you fail. We cannot get less school aid than the past. It's as simple as that. So we're gonna do whatever it takes to have a budget that makes sure our schools have the resources that the students and the teachers deserve. That's just always the first responsibility of any senator, regardless of their party, and that's the test that we have to pass. A, because it would be political suicide not to do it, and B, because our constituents deserve it.
If I can add to that.
Sure.
Okay. Got it. We've got to recognize that state aid and the way we fund education has been a question for a long time. We're in a situation right now in this state because of changes in the federal tax law and what that's going to mean to the deductibility of certain expenses. We are going to have to closely examine how we fund education to begin with. We either have to make major changes in the federal tax law, or we have to re-examine how we're funding education. And in part of that process, we have to take into consideration regional cost factors. We have to take into consideration that through the testing that we've done, more and more students have been identified as having learning disabilities of one type or another. All of that has to be re-examined. So I think in the next year or two, we have to take a step back and take a hard look at how we're funding education as well as government, particularly with the impact of the new federal tax laws, and to look for ways of funding education that are more realistic. We fund education today principally by property taxes. Property taxes are driven by the assessed value of the home. There is no real relationship between the assessed value of home and someone's economic abilities to pay taxes. So we need to take the time to make a good, hard look at what's going on. And I think with the changes we're making here with this delegation in particular, in the one area in the country that's the highest tax, it's going to force a new look, and then a look for fairer and better ways to raise those funds.
What would be some alternatives to the property tax to fund education?
I think we've got to understand first and foremost the impact of the new federal tax law. And the best estimates are that it's going to result in New Yorkers paying $18 billion more in additional taxes. So we have to stop and look at what's happening there. We're in a situation today, again, Long Island, Nassau County gets 4%, Suffolk County gets 8% of the state aid. There's no real reflection in there on our regional cost factors, changing demographic profiles in our district. So I think it's going to require a real deep study. And I think, you know, we can look at things. You've got the marijuana sales, if that's passed. You've got sports betting, if that becomes passed. But I think we really have to examine how we fund education and government to ways that are reflective of people's economic ability to pay the taxes. So that's a key factor.
But I think unless there's anything urgent, I'm going to, Marcia, one more thing.
One more question. So putting aside I wonder how you think the agenda in the agenda in Albany will change now that you have Democratic control of the Senate.
Yeah, look, I think there's a wide array of progressive things that everyone in the conference agrees on. Everyone in the conference wants to do something about choice. Everyone wants to do something about early voting. Everyone wants to do something about red flag gun laws. Everyone wants to do something about the LLC loophole. I mean, there's the first 10 things, whether it's on environmental stuff, on criminal justice stuff, I mean, there is a wide range of things that by and large we all agree on. I'm not saying every word of every bill as it exactly stands right now, but there's a whole lot of things that we all want to do right away that have just been sitting there. I think every person in the conference said they want to do the Child Victims Act, right? We could do that on hour one of day one. It's just a question of how the majority leader wants to put things on the calendar and what else we want to do. And we also have a whole lot of good things out there to check Washington. So I have a bill, for example, that would close a pardon loophole. If the president were to pardon someone, New York law actually is a loophole that would make the state law pardoned at the same time. Brad Hoylman has a bill that would require someone to turn over their tax returns if they want to be on the ballot in New York. So we all agree on a lot. I think it's, and I think there'll be a lot of great things we're all going to come together on right away.
So you're saying there's like a new wind, a new spirit, a new...
There's no doubt. I think the frustration that people have felt, not only in Washington but in Albany, of having common sense things bottled up, is what brings us here today, and there's a lot that we could do on that day one when we all get there together.
And Marcia, can I underscore one thing that Todd said that from a political standpoint? If you think about this, if all of this resulted from an election, if these folks can go up and impact the electoral process with early voting, unlimited absentee ballot voting, and expanding the ability for people to register and register automatically, do a lot of things to expand the opportunity for New Yorkers to vote, and focus on fair redistricting. I'm going to tell you something. It's going to change New York and the landscape of New York forever. And that's, I think, a big deal.
So I think that's it.
That's it.
Thank
Yep,
you.
thank you, and thanks for everybody for coming.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.